Disclaimer. This content is created using combinations of publicly available information, research, and AI-assisted analysis for educational and informational purposes only. While every effort has been made to ensure accuracy, some details may be simplified, interpreted, or adapted for storytelling and viewer engagement. The content does not intend to harm, defame, or target any individual, group, organization, or community. Any references to real events, places, or systems are presented in a generalized and non-biased manner. Viewers are encouraged to conduct their own research and form their own opinions. This content should not be considered professional, legal, or official advice. Some elements of this content may be dramatized to enhance narrative quality while maintaining overall factual integrity. Viewer discretion is advised.
All right, let's jump right in. We're going to be talking about one of the most complex, most fascinating border situations anywhere in the world right now. We're talking about that long, winding line between India and Myanmar, a place where history, culture, and a really serious security crisis are all colliding.
But to really get it, let's make it personal for a second. Imagine this. What if a line drawn on a map decades ago ran right through the middle of your town? What if it cut your community, your own village, in half, separating you from family, from friends, from your own history?
Well, for the ethnic groups living all along this border, that's not some thought experiment. It's their daily reality. You see, the border itself was drawn back in colonial times, and it just sliced right through communities that have been one for centuries. It's a fact of life that has shaped everything out here for generations.
To deal with this pretty unique situation, an equally unique policy was created. It's called the Free Movement Regime, or the FMR. It was basically a formal way of saying, hey, we know these aren't just two countries. This is one big cultural landscape. It let people travel up to 16 kilometers across the border, no visa needed, just to maintain those absolutely crucial family and cultural bonds. But now, that entire long-standing agreement is at a breaking point.
And what's the reason for that? Well, it's a crisis inside Myanmar that is literally spilling over its borders, and it is changing absolutely everything.
Now, take a look at this. This slide shows you the trigger points so clearly. On the left, that's the level of political violence before the military coup in February 2021. And on the right, well, that's the explosion of conflict after. The whole country was basically thrown into chaos.
And we're not talking about a simple civil war here. The state itself has basically fragmented. Get this, since that coup, more than 2,600 new armed groups have popped up. That has created a massive power vacuum, and it's right on India's doorstep.
Of course, the most immediate result of that violence is the human one. People are fleeing for their lives. The UNHCR has tracked nearly 70,000 people who have escaped Myanmar and crossed into India looking for safety since all of this began.
But the spillover is more than just refugees. This instability has put existing threats on steroids. Insurgent groups now have safe havens to operate from. The border has turned into a highway for drug trafficking coming out of the Golden Triangle, and an illegal arms trade is pouring gasoline on conflicts all over the region.
So, faced with this escalating crisis, India has landed on a very direct and, frankly, a very drastic solution. The plan is to build a wall of control.
The government's plan is to put up a fence along the entire length of the border. That's 1,643 kilometers. The scale of this project is it's immense. So here's the game plan, broken down into 3 key steps. First, get rid of the free movement regime, the very thing that has defined life here for decades. Second, build that massive fence. And third, pave a patrol road right next to it, so it can be watched constantly. The end goal, to create a border that nothing and no one can get through.
But a plan on a piece of paper is one thing. The reality on the ground, well, that's a whole different story. This is going to be an uphill battle, with some truly monumental hurdles in the way.
And these challenges really are towering. You've got absolutely punishing geography, deep-seated cultural resistance from the people who actually live there, and strong political opposition from inside India itself. Let's break each one down.
Okay, first, just look at the terrain. We are not talking about flat open desert here. This border cuts through the Himalayas. We're talking rugged mountains, incredibly dense forests, and steep river valleys. The rain is so constant that you can only really do construction a few months out of the year. Just maintaining a fence here would be a logistical nightmare.
Second, and maybe even more important, is the human element.
This quote really nails it. For tribes like the Naga, the Kuki, the Mizo, and the Chin, the border doesn't really exist in a cultural sense. So building a fence, to them, is like building a wall right through their living room, cutting them off from their own relatives and their entire way of life.
And that cultural resistance, it quickly becomes political opposition. As you can see right here, while some states are for the fence, the governments of both Nagaland and Mizoram are officially against it. And that is a huge roadblock, because in India, land is a state issue. If they say no, it makes the central government's plan incredibly difficult to pull off.
So with all these challenges, how do you even start to manage a border this complex? Well, this is where modern tech comes in. And this map is a brilliant illustration. It uses GIS mapping to give us new insights. Here, green shows the gentle slopes, yellow is moderate, and red, that's the really steep, difficult stuff.
And when you analyze this data, you find something really fascinating. Different groups use the land in different ways. Refugees, who are often moving with children and families, they tend to stick to the easier, gentle green valleys. But traffickers and smugglers, they actually prefer the moderately sloped yellow zones. Why? Because it gives them cover, but it's still close enough to roads. This tells you that a one-size-fits-all surveillance strategy just isn't going to work.
But this whole story isn't just about local security or fancy terrain mapping. To really understand what's at stake, we have to zoom way out and look at the giant geopolitical chessboard.
You see, this border is absolutely vital for India's Act East policy. The whole idea is for it to be a strategic gateway, a land bridge connecting India's massive economy to the booming markets of Southeast Asia. Any instability here puts that entire grand vision at risk.
And then, of course, there's the China factor. Beijing's influence in Myanmar is growing, and they've been supporting the military government there. This adds a huge new layer of complexity to everything. Every move India makes on this border is being watched, and it all has big implications for the regional balance of power.
So this timeline really pulls it all together. It shows you the dramatic swing. We went from a policy of openness back in the 1950s, one that put cultural ties first, to a full-blown security meltdown after the 2021 coup. And that led directly to the 2024 decision to scrap the old ways, seal the border, and sink a huge amount of money into this massive fence project.
Which leaves us with one final, really critical question. The problems that are spilling across this border, insurgency, trafficking, humanitarian crises, they don't respect lines on a map. They're interconnected, they're transnational. So in a world that is this connected, can a physical wall ever truly be the solution?